I think it should be a really good experience learning about SPSS, e-views, and all other things. Without wasting much time, I thought I would straight get into my presentation mode. And share with you. Now, somebody will have to tell me that my PPT is visible or not to you. Then I'll proceed. Sandra ma'am or anyone, Kondal sir, anybody can tell me.
Very much visible, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. That was Daisy ma'am, I think. There. Now, this is a topic that's given to me. Now, if I have to get through, I left some of these definitions which are related with research. And one of them I like is this Albert Georgi's definition, where he says research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has taught. That's something amazing if you can read between the lines. And I like this other definition by John Armstrong, where he says, aside from a pure pursuit of knowledge, just for its own sake, research is linked to problem solving. So there are no problems, there's no research. I mean, it is a common kind of a thing there. We all like to be pointing out where the deficiency is, where things are going wrong, or where the problem lies. But most often we fail to be a part of the solution. We are often part of the problem. So there is no problem, there's no research. That's how you take it. And why should a student go about doing research? I believe there are scholars here. Now you go about with gaining lot into problem solving skills. You understand research methods better. You understand your discipline better. Daisy ma'am said there could be people from management also, commerce also here. It goes about with giving you a lot of sense of confidence and things to think independently. It goes about with kickstarting things in terms of understanding your career and your education path. Now, how do you generate a topic? First and foremost, you review your notes of whichever major that you come from, economics, commerce, management, or whichever social sciences you come from. I mean, this is something wherein you need to ask your professor, but most often I would discourage this because what are there in the mind, they would push on you or rub on you. I mean, it may not be to your liking or to your passion there. And you got to brainstorm with your friends. You got to brainstorm with your classmates. Now, suppose I ask any one of the participants, can you tell me what is the greatest invention ever known to mankind? Greatest invention ever known to mankind? Someone can unmute, speak, and mute back. Yes? Sir? Fire, agriculture. I'm giving some clues. Can you tell me what is the greatest innovation or invention known to mankind? Invention.
The wheel.
Wheel, absolutely. Now, in research, you don't go about with reinventing the wheel. Now, why am I telling this is where, people ask, why do you need 3 years, 4 years to do a PhD? Because, we are trying to get a crystal clear idea about what has already been done. Because when a student is trying to give his viva, we ask him, what is your contribution? I mean, what have you added new to this area? So the thing is, when you do a deep-rooted literature review, you come to know what is called as gaps in the existing literature. Now you are there to go about with fulfilling those gaps with your work, with your research. Now these gaps need to be articulated into objectives. And if you want to test these objectives in an empirical way, you go about with designing your hypothesis. And to meet the requirements of the objectives and the hypothesis is where you do the data collection. So literature review is of paramount importance. In the end, people shouldn't say what is new about it. And if you are coming from a specific area, you need to visit your areas which are related with your specialization. Join some research groups. I mean, if somebody is coming from MSW or anything there, or rural development, I wish that you visit the marginalized communities. You need to figure out what is the need to do research in your area. Probably you can use mind mapping, you can use problem trees, fishbone, or a lot of those tools which are available to figure out what exactly is the problem. Because the thing we say is a problem well understood is half solved. A problem is not understood, you may bang around the bush and you may not get anywhere. And it's not about copying or anything there. If you can give a peep into the work which has already been done, you visit the thesis library in your area, what is done. And at the end of any work, you will figure out that there are limitations, there is scope for further research, and that should become your starting point. Now, be it economics or any business related studies, let's say management, commerce, or whatever, I wish that you go about with doing a deep rooted study related with business newspapers. So, what exactly is a research problem? I mean, it's a problem that someone would like to do research about. It's an area where you find that you are unsatisfactory, or there is something which is called as an unsettling force in you. You find something very difficult, or you believe that something is to be changed, or you need to do something about it. So, problems involve areas of concern to the researcher, the condition they want to improve, the difficulty they want to eliminate, the questions for which they want to seek answers for. And that is what is the research problem. Now, what are the sources? You can get it out of experience. You can get it by reading a lot of theory. You can get it to go about with figuring out what is called as an applied part of the theory and the experience there. So we watch a lot of things. Do we have eye for details? So the observations may be unsystematic, it may be informal. Now, somebody told me you can get the best education by traveling in a second class railway compartment, seeing the way things go around you. Now, that's observing things. And theory. I mean, there are a lot of assumptions. What causes a behavior? Very often quoted thing in economics, we say is a glorified concept where you talk about break-even point, the point at which the total cost is equal to the total revenue. Total cost is total fixed cost plus total variable cost. Total revenue is price multiplied by quantity. But if it's such a small thing, and how do you figure out what is break-even point? Fixed cost divided by the contribution per unit or PV ratio and other things you do. Not many assumptions are there. A multinational company like Coca-Cola makes a re-entry into India in 1993, and they take 10 years for it to break even. Why is that? Why 10 long years? I mean, if a toddler or a fourth class or a fifth class student can do that numerical in figuring out how many units do I sell to reach a point of break even, why should it take 10 years for a multinational company? Because the formula is filled with too many assumptions. It says the fixed cost remain constant, the variable cost remain constant, the selling price remains constant. I mean, whatever is produced, nothing remains unsold. You come out of that, you use this condition where he says ceteris paribus, other things remaining constant. You come out of that constancy, it fails. Now, somebody said assumption is you make an ass out of you and me. So you'll have to understand that assumptions properly. You got to figure out as to how the relationships are. And at this point, let me tell you what is a variable and what is an attribute. Now, something which you can measure and express in terms of numbers is a variable. And things where you can tell only presence or absence and you can't express it in terms of numbers is called as an attribute. If you want to find relationship between numbers, you do what is called as correlation. And if you want to go about with finding relationship between traits, features, characteristics, where you can't measure in terms of numbers, you use a word called association. And again, I'll come to this word, what is deductive and inductive a little later. So, the scientific theory can be a potent source. Let us say that I talk about an Engel's law. I talk about Giffen goods. I may talk about Veblen goods. I mean, there are these things. Why do people buy gold even when the prices are increasing? You say it's to do with snobbery or snob appeal, which we relate with Veblen goods. Right. So the thing is, there is theory. There is law of demand. There's law of supply. I mean, there are normal goods. There are inferior goods. You talk about salt being a perfect example for it. I mean, the elasticity of demand being inelastic in that. I mean, there are these theories that are there. The next thing is this applied thing. I mean, today we are more interested in figuring out whatever things that are happening around. Is it COVID compliant? And I'm trying to figure out, when I was trying to use this sanitizers per se. Now, if I use that and leave it with somebody else's hand, my thing gets infected to somebody else. Someone came out with an idea. Why don't you have a pedal stand wherein you'll press it and the liquid oozes and you can go about? I said, why that? When I get into the malls and the supermarkets, there is this container and it has got a sensor. You put your hand beneath and you get the sanitizing liquid and you wash. People are trying to find solution to a problem. Do I have my keys with me right away? Let me see if I do have one. It sounds awkward when I stand during the presentation. But the thing is, somebody came out with an application. Now look at this key. If you can figure out in the screen there, and I can open the lift or try to use my ATM, or if I have to open a door or close a door, I think I have somebody who had come out with an innovative thing here. I'm talking about applied. Now let me get a little further. What are the characteristics of a good research question? It should be feasible. You may have very ambitious ideas, but you don't get the data. What will you do with that? And as I said rightly, that a problem well understood is half solved. Forget about convincing all other people in the research committee. First things first, are you clear about what you want to do research about? Are you able to figure out and use the right choice of words and convey it to your guide or your research supervisor? You need that minimal clarity about what you want to figure out. It can't be easy. It can't be like the emperor's new clothes, right? The question got to be very significant. Why are you trying to do investigation? What is the importance of it? Another thing, when you're trying to do certain things, like let's say people are trying to figure out whether the vaccines have got efficacy and other things there. I mean, they may give somebody a placebo. It's nothing but distilled water. And what if he's infected and he dies because he's not given the vaccine there? I mean, you talk about ethical related issues as well. And then I want to draw your attention before even I get into the methodology. We have got 5 sense organs. We receive stimuli. Observation is not just with our eyes. I said, when I receive stimuli with my 5 sense organs, I process it in my mind and I attach meaning to it. The meaning I attach becomes my values, my beliefs, my attitudes, my feelings, and my opinions. Now, these things put together will become my behavior. Now, why am I different from you? Because what I receive as stimuli, the way I process it in my mind, the way I attach meaning in terms of beliefs, values, attitudes, feelings, and opinions vary mine from yours. Okay? Now, when you observe something, your mind has drawn a conclusion. That's not final. Ask Daisy ma'am, ask Kondal sir, or maybe Sandra ma'am, or anyone for that matter there. Now, when they finish their PhD, they've submitted what is called a thesis. Thesis is the final word. Hypo is something which is tentative. Hypo is something which is to do with temporary. Now, I'm running into my mind. I come from a college. Just beside it, we have a law college. And it says, a person is innocent as long as he or she is proved guilty. Now, hypothesis, I'll just put it in 2 ways. One is null, when you say status quo, no change, no effect, no impact. Alternate hypothesis, we would always take it as antithesis or against the null hypothesis. Tentative. I still remember school days. There is a person who said, just like the seeds are scattered in a watermelon, he said electrons are scattered in an atom, but that's not true. That was J.J. Thomson then. Now, why go that far? Now, we know that the celebrity Shah Rukh Khan's son is being caught on a cruise. Now, the thing is, I would say Aryan is innocent, Aryan is guilty. Now, there is a lot of clues and a lot of material collected to prove whether he is innocent or guilty there. You draw a conclusion. Let us say one of the lower court has proved him guilty. He'll go to the high court. The cycle will continue. And he is proved guilty even in the high court. He'll approach the Supreme Court. Now, this is a cycle. From where you leave, from your conclusion, somebody observes something and the cycle continues. That is the reason we call it the research cycle. This experimentation that is there and done in 2 ways. One is to do with the deductive approach and other is to do with the inductive approach. Now, what is this deductive? I know pretty well that tomorrow Indrakant sir would be speaking to you about sampling and how do you design the sample size. Very crucial. Now, the thing is, the deductive approach is when you go from general to particular, where you use the entire population of census for your study. Now, inductive approach is where you go from particular to general. I mean, simple things that we do every day. Maybe I tried cooking rice to know whether everything in the pot is cooked. 1 grain is sufficient for me. I smash it between my fingers. If it becomes a paste, I say it's cooked. But if it's still grainy, I said something is to be done. For a typical Hyderabadi language, I'd say leave it for dum for some more time. You're talking about particular to general. I weigh a little over 85 kgs. I get symptoms of shivering, intermittent high-low fever, sweating. I go tell my doctors in the health center, give me malaria drugs. They said, you're a PhD in commerce and management, not in medicine. And there is a guy who was waiting in the diagnostic center to prick my index finger with a needle. A little small drop of blood smeared on a few slides, look through the microscope, and he says whether malarial parasite is there in my body or not. With a small drop of blood, you're trying to make a generalization of my entire 80 odd kgs body. I'm talking about inductive, I'm talking about sampling. You can never undermine the utility of sampling in research there. So here, I said, when you do the experimentation, you do it either by deductive or inductive. Now, where else do ideas come from? It comes from experience, it comes from theory, it comes from literature. What is literature? You're trying to go about with seeking information. Now, just now, Sandra ma'am said, I speak a paper which is called as critical thinking. You require it. The new educational policy says students will no more go into rote method of learning, but critical thinking. Critical is not about finding fault with somebody. It is thinking about your own thinking. How do you understand? When you read an article, what are you trying to figure out? Why are you considering as a part of your literature or part of your work? You're doing it without any bias. How are you validating it? Now, what should a literature review do? It should be organized in and around things which are directly related with your work, directly related with your research question. You should be able to synthesize what the researchers have done in probably a few words there, making a précis out of it. You got to identify what are the controversy areas. And when you do the literature, it helps you to formulate questions that need to be probed, that need to be further researched. And then further, if you look into, you can get a lot of that. You can get it from newspapers, books, journals, periodicals. There's a lot of the sources that are there. Maybe there's media also, which is giving you a lot of ideas. Now, getting into the steps in research. You're talking about formulating a problem. I said a problem well understood is half solved. You do extensive literature review, and the basic idea is to identify gaps in previous research. Now, based on the gaps, you develop objectives and you prepare a research design. This is the blueprint of the work that you wish to continue with. That is the research design. And what Indrakant sir will speak tomorrow is about the sample design. Whether you do random, probabilistic, non-random, non-probabilistic, what are the pros and cons? How do you go about collecting the data? I mean, there is a reason why I've put these two things in bold, because I often come across students that do the data collection because I teach or dabble a little with the statistics. They come and ask me, sir, what tools are to be used? I tell them, this you should have decided even before you have collected the data. I mean, you've got to be clear as to what is univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. If you can summarize the entire set of data with a single value, you call it univariate. When you believe that one value is being influenced by two factors, you call it bivariate. You do an ANOVA or a chi-square. And when you believe that multiple forces are influencing a number simultaneously, then you say you do a multivariate analysis. It could be conjoint, it could be multidimensional scaling, discriminant analysis, factor analysis, or whatever. You have to decide it much before. And then whatever holds good for the sample, you say holds good for the population. And that is what you do in the generalization step. And you got to be clear under what circumstances can you draw the interpretation. There are some assumptions. And preparing a report or making a formal presentation, getting to your viva voce is the end of the research there. And it could be the beginning of somebody else's research. Now, types of research, there are a lot of things that are there. They could be basic or applied. I mean, the economics that I teach is more about applications of economics when I teach it to commerce and management. What Daisy ma'am and Kundal sir and all others do it there, whether it's Ramlu sir or Natsma sir or whoever, I mean, they are more into the basic part of it. I mean, you have this person by name Rudyard Kipling. He said, I had 6 wise men who have given me all the knowledge in the world. And somebody asked who the 6 wise men are. He said it's to do with the who, why, what, where, when kind of a thing there. Now, if you're trying to talk something except the why part, you're trying to relate with everything else, then it is descriptive. But when you're trying to have a cause and effect relationship, you call it analytical. And I am very particular about this exploratory and empirical. When you are trying to work in numbers. Okay. Now, suppose you have it qualitative and quantitative. That is the title that is given to me, in fact. When you want to establish cause and effect, simple regression formula y is equal to a plus bx, where y is the dependent variable, x is the independent variable, a is y's intercept, and b is the slope of the curve. Now, suppose I say that sales is dependent on expenditure on advertisement. But as a student of marketing, I tell that sales is dependent on 8 P's if it is to do with service, or 4 P's if it's to do with a good or a product. But it's a product, price, place, promotion, and people, processes, physical evidence, and productivity. So when I have to put it, then it becomes y is equal to a plus b1 x1 b2 x2 till bn xn. I'm trying to figure out what is the relationship. The research can be over a period of time. It can be an experiment. It can be to do with evaluative kind of thing. It could be participative. For me, three things are very important. When I'm trying to shed light on the problem, because I said understanding the problem is as good as have been solved. To shed light on the problem and you do research, you call it exploratory. People are still trying to grope as to what has caused Ebola in Liberia. People are still trying to figure out what exactly is this Zika virus. By the time we understood these two, then you had this COVID. Right? You're trying to work out a medicine. I think for the first two, what I mentioned, it was very hard to get even the vaccines there. Now, you want to talk about everything except the why. That is descriptive. But when you want to figure out the relationship, that is where we talk about the causal part of it. Now, what is the composition of a research design? This is the blueprint. So you have a statement of the problem, and you have some questions to be answered, or you have an hypothesis. Hypothesis is a statement based on your objective, and you want to prove it hypothetically. You want to figure out what is the importance, why are you doing this research? Some people try giving it in terms of what is need for the research or importance of the study, or you're trying to figure out what are the objectives of the research study. And you have to be very clear about the assumptions, the concepts, the operational definitions, what variables are involved. You got to tell it very clearly as to you're collecting it for the very first time or something which is collected by somebody else. You're trying to go about it, fine tuning it to your requirement, whether using observation methods or using question methods. If it is question, whether it is open-ended, closed-ended, or you talk about dichotomous, or a lot of other things like don't know, can't say kind of things there. Here you're going to talk about what is the sample size, right? Maybe you have some software tools like Qualtrics, Qualtrics. It tells you like anything about 10,000 is infinite, below 10,000 is finite. And how do you figure out? A little while ago, I told you like what tools of analysis do you use? Whether you're going to describe the entire phenomenon with a single value, or you say two factors influence, many factors influence. That is what you make it very clear when you say about the bivariate and multivariate. And you got to be very clear about the geographical terms, where, people go about saying you're doing it in India. But at the end, if you look at people who have collected data, very small part of Hyderabad that way there. Make it very clear. What is your geographical thing? And what is your time thing? And what you want to actually prove. If I say consumer behavior, I would figure out, the post-purchase dissatisfaction people get into. It's called cognitive dissonance. If I am trying to do research in that area, people ask me questions about other things. I'd say that my scope is limited to only this concept. You got to work out, figure out the planning. That's a saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You'll have to work out like what amount of resources are required in terms of money, in terms of people, and working according to the time is very important. Now, these are things you mentioned in the research design, which is your blueprint. Another thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is not all data is something which you can work upon, right? There are two things which are qualitative and there are two things which are quantitative. In fact, mixed methodology is a blend of both qualitative and quantitative. Now here, when you say nominal, it is, I have seen India losing very badly against Pakistan yesterday, something which is nightmarish. The jersey number of these cricketers, roll numbers of students, hall ticket number of students. You can't do any research on that. It is meant for only classification and identification. Why Kohli has that number? Why Tendulkar has that number? Why Dhoni has got that number 7 there? It's only for categorization. And if you're trying to put something in ranks, you call it ordinal. Tomorrow, when you do what is called as SPSS or reviews, this is the basic thing that you'll have to be very clear about. Is the data qualitative or is it quantitative? There could be numbers in this also. Roll numbers are there, all ticket numbers are there. Today we did admission, we called people ranks from 1 to 60. It is a number. First rank is a number, 60 also is a number. But the thing is, can I apply statistical tools on that? And when I can figure out mean, when I can do the difference between the highest value and the lowest value, then I call it interval. And those numbers where I can do all kind of arithmetical calculations, I call it ratio. Now, types of data, another thing that is there. Quantitative, qualitative. We're still trying to figure out the words which Daisy ma'am had given me in the title there. Quantitative is again of two types. I mean, it's a data which is measured in numbers there. Now, when I say continuous, it can have a decimal value in it. But when I say discrete, I can't exhibit it in decimal value. When I say number of people attending this particular thing, last when I seen the number was close to 50 or so. But some are with their, let's say, video on or phone on, the audio on, and they are not available. Should I say 0.5 of the person is available? No. When I say number of machines, number of computers, number of cell phones, I can't have it in decimal values. When I say continuous, it got to be in interval or ratio again, the nature of the number. And when I say qualitative, it is usually nominal or ordinal. Right? Now look at the scale, or you talk about Likert scale or Likert, somebody would call it. It ranges on a 5-point scale between strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. You're talking about qualitative. You can only say presence or absence. You can't give a numerical value to it. Now let me get into the next thing as to what is this hypothesis testing. Now let me distinguish between these three things. What is assumption? You take things for granted. Okay, you are trying to get into a progress of agreement. There are some formulae that are there in statistics or a lot of measurements that are there. So assumption means you restrict conditions before the argument can become valid. Under these conditions, this argument goes well. When you come out of these conditions, this does not go well. You talk about ceteris paribus there. So assumptions are made on the basics of logical insight. It is based on truthfulness that can be observed. It is on the basis of the data or the evidences that have been provided. How can you assume things? When I say postulate, it is about working beliefs of most scientific activity. It's a statement assumed to be true without need of proof of any kind. If A plus B is equal to B plus A, you don't have to prove it. Sometimes we tell in synergy 1 plus 1 is greater than 2, but we need to prove it. But here, if it is a postulate, it stands good that way. And then when you talk about hypothesis, it is different from an assumption and a postulate. It is a presumptive statement. It is a proposition which an investigator seeks to prove. It is a condensed generalization. It requires principles, things. I mean, you have to have some prior knowledge before you actually frame. And it doesn't run into paras and paras. It is a statement which is to be rejected or accepted. All right. Now, Aryan, is he innocent or guilty? That's it. Nothing more than that. Now, again, these two words also, because you'll come across that. What is a parameter? Anything which relates with a population is a parameter, and anything which relates with the sample is a statistic. Simple as that. P and P and S and S. And what is it? I mean, all your formulae that are there, maybe with SPSS, greater extent, not much with EViews, will revolve around these symbols. If I have to talk about a sample mean, I say X bar. If I have to say a population mean, I'll call it mu. If I have to say a standard deviation, I say standard error for a sample. For a population, I use sigma. For proportion, I say small p, and here I say capital P, maybe P with the caret symbol there. Size, I say small n for a sample, and for a population, I say capital N. And figure out almost all the hypothesis testing formulae most often revolve around these symbols there. Now, what is hypothesis testing? So we frame, just the way I said, Aryan is innocent, Aryan is guilty. Innocent is null hypothesis, guilty is alternate hypothesis. So I go through with the steps. Okay, then again, you talk about level of significance, critical value. You talk about type 1, type 2 error. Let me make it very clear. Type 1 error is where your hypothesis is right and you still reject it. Type 2 is where your hypothesis is wrong and you accept it. Type 1 is represented by alpha and type 2 is represented by beta. to use a statistical formula. Now, the formula can be a parametric test or the formula can be a non-parametric test. What is parametric test? I have a population. From that, I draw a sample. And on that sample, if I work out statistical tools, the test that I use there is called parametric test. But if I have a sample, I don't know to which parent population it belongs. I don't know the characteristics of the parent population. On such a sample, if I apply statistical tools, it is called non-parametric tests. Quite often, we teach a lot of parametric tests, but what is more applicable and of more utility is the non-parametric ones. Now, again, the basic distinction here in parametric, you make assumptions about the population. You don't have any assumptions here. Here, normally you use what is called as, if you distribute or present that in the form of a graph, you should get a normal distribution curve. Here, the distribution is arbitrary. And here you use mean value as the central tendency, you use median value, a value which breaks the given data into two equal halves. It requires prior knowledge about population. Here you don't require any prior knowledge about the population. Now, hypothesis tests, that is what you will get into SPSS and other things there, where you talk about parametric and non-parametric, where you try working out in a single sample or two samples, or non-parametric. I think I don't want to get into all this gambit here. You could go about with it. And what we actually do in research is we come out with a very broad area, narrow it down, and then once we have figured out the conclusions, we try working it out for the entire population, where we talk about the generalization part of it. So developing a good hypothesis is where you do what is called as origin of the problem, and you figure out the criteria, you try to search, explore, gather evidence, and you start coming out with logical solutions there. Educated guess is said to be an hypothesis. Okay, I don't want to get much, but this is a structure that you have, where you say you observe, you do some preliminary data gathering, you do the problem definition, problem well defined as half solved. For me, most crucial thing is critical thinking. I said about deductive and inductive again. You work out what are the variables, you make some generalization. Research design is very important. I just showed you a slide. What are the things which come under it? You do the data collection, you do the inductive or deductive hypothesis. And then if all these things go right, then you do the report writing, presentation, and whatever is developed or emanates out of your research is useful to the policymakers. So again, the steps and research design, but again, I have to tell it out that you'll have to go about connecting various aspects of your research. I mean, I usually look at if something is told in the topic, where is it getting reflected at the end? The statement, is it getting into the solution? The theory, is it getting into the discussion? The methods, is it being worked out with the results? I mean, I'm looking for one word to tell all these things. In the end, I look for coherence. If coherence is missing, I will really question why research was done. I mean, there is oceans of data, but not all the water can be consumed. There's a rivers, data is processed, we call it information, and streams of knowledge, much more filtered. But the end product of any research got to be this part, wherein it got to be drops of wisdom and understanding. What people know less and less, you're trying to explore and try to make it more and more about that. So it's drops of wisdom and understanding is the real purpose of working out research there. Now let me get into the topic a little more into it after telling you about what is qualitative, what is quantitative, what is parametric, what is non-parametric, what is hypothesis, what are steps in research, the definition part. This is the core. What is mixed methods? Now you have qualitative data. What is it? It could be words. I mean, you have done some interview. There are transcripts, examination, it is transcripts. You have observation field notes. You note down something, or you have some optically scanned documents, right? Here you have some numbers. These are quantitative, expressed, given in terms of numbers. Next thing, when you're trying to work out, there could be quantitative data, things which can be expressed, measured numerically, but things which cannot be expressed in numbers. There's a demarcation between two of them. And when you're trying to bring a blend between the qualitative and the quantitative, that is where you're calling it as the mixed methods. So there are methods, and when you apply it, it becomes a methodology. There are paradigms, and how you go about with using the mixed things. So what exactly is this mixed method when you do for research is, You collect both things which can be measured in terms of numbers, things which can't be measured, and you mix them. You make a blend. I mean, today we are talking about online, offline. Today morning, I took classes at the Department of Commerce that was offline. And now this program, I'm doing it in an online. Overall, my teaching today had been in a blended mode. Mix of both. I mean, how do you do it? Do you mix both of them simultaneously? Or you mix one after the other sequentially? Or what is the blend? You give more importance to quantitative or more importance to qualitative? What way do you do it? Where is the emphasis on? Now, again, when you get to the definition part of what is this mixed method, it is a method or a methodology for conducting research which involves collecting, analyzing, integrating, that is, getting together both quantitative and qualitative in a single study or a longitudinal program or inquiry. And the purpose of this form of research is both qualitative and quantitative. It is a combination to provide a better understanding of a research problem issue. And it can be either approaches that you follow. And how do you collect the quantitative data? You may use instruments, basically questionnaires. You may use checklists. You may use some records. When you say qualitative, you may conduct an interview. You may observe. You may collect some documents. It could be audio-visual material, which you'll go about with applying. And when you talk about analysis, quantitative, you use statistical packages. Now, eViews and statistical package for social sciences, Excel, PSPP or Python or RTool, they're all to do with statistical tools. It may be for description, it may be for comparing, or it may be trying to figure out relationship between the variables. When you talk about qualitative analysis, you are trying to understand the text, the images, trying to connect the dots, or you would try to work out a code, or you're trying to develop a theme. Psychology, you talk about thematic appreciation test. By giving a small image, you ask people to write a story, and you're able to tell their personality based on that story. Right? You're talking about relating themes. Now, how do you do the linking? Now, do you go about with bringing the quant and the qualities? Look at the arrow diagram. Both are brought together. Or first you do the qualitative, then you do the quantitative, and then you generate the results. Or your quantitative has got qualitative element embedded in that. This is how you do the linking part. The other thing is typical situation where you should use mixed method is where you want to compare results. You want to vouch, you want to get a better feel that, you're getting a kind of a buttress or a support kind of a thing with when you combine qualitative and quantitative. So when you use qualitative research, it helps you to explain the quantitative ones better. It helps you to explore qualitative research and to generalize findings to a larger population, maybe using numbers empirically, and to develop an instrument because they're not available. So you'll have to find a blend of both. And to augment, that is where I use the word support or facilitate the experiment with qualitative. You have quantitative, but if you can get a better feel with qualitative, it goes well. And then what is the reason for it? You can't go about with working out an argument independently either with a qualitative or a quantitative. It is insufficient by itself. So by bringing them into a blending, probably you can develop a better argument. Or you want to get multiple angles of an argument. It is half-baked either with qualitative or quantitative. You want to gather more evidence. You want to go about with figuring out what is the best approach. Or you want to go about with saying, this is something which makes my research more complete, right? It gets more closer to reality than what is virtual or intuitive. Now, when you work out a design of a mixed method, you'll have to work out the preliminary consideration, the reasons. I've told you the reasons why we use it. Then you'll have to create a title. You got to pose questions. You got to list out what kind of data and analysis that you require. You got to make it very clear what is your worldview. People talk about a lot of things there in social sciences. You got to figure out what your research design is. You got to figure out what your design would, when you translate it into practice there, you have to write your purpose statement, your research questions, and you got to finish your research plan. Now, your preliminary considerations would be what is the content and how does that problem fit into a mixed method, qualitative and quantitative. Now, do you have access to both the qualitative part, things which can't be measured into numbers, and things which can be measured? What are the background material, the resources you have? Are the people who get involved, are they receptive to your ideas there? Now you got to write a title which got to be short, it's your topic, and it got to include words which will reflect that you have applied mixed methods. Or is it neutral? It can be either qualitative or quantitative part. Now pose some questions. I mean, you got to go about with putting it. This is where we say we all think in our mother tongue. And we'll have to find the right choice of words in which you explain the problem. That is where you use the word articulation. Ask yourself, when will it end? You have a time framework and other things there. So here you said, list out your data collection tools, what instruments, what kind of behavioral checklists, what kind of records you require. If it is qualitative, what kind of interviews, what kind of observations. I had been to Bangkok at the Swarnabhumi airport. I've seen my skeleton. People thought, that was after 9/11. So people thought I have some explosives planted in my bones. So they checked my thing there. And still the same observation. It can be with your eyes or it can be mechanical devices. I walk into a mall. People suspect I have come for shopping or to blow that mall. They use metal detectors. They frisk me, they check me. So I'm talking about tools that you use for observation. There could be documents, there could be audiovisual material, which you take it as a basis for your research. Now, if you want to figure out what Ambedkar had in his mind there are a lot of BBC related things. When somebody sees the movie of Gandhi, which was by Richard Attenborough, you don't find Ambedkar being referred anywhere in that movie there. I don't know. Somebody said, how can the father of Constitution not be reflected in that movie then? Audiovisual material. And further, when you go there, you'll have to tell out what are your sources and your approach, whether you use statistical tools, whether you describe, compare, relate, you use text and images, coding. We have already done this thing. Now you'll have to check out the philosophy that is there, one paradigm, or you're trying to look for multiple paradigms. In fact, what I will do is maybe at the end of the day, I'll share with Kondal sir or with Daisy ma'am, I'll share this book written by Creswell. The title is about mixed methodology. I mean, people talk a lot about the ontology, epistemology. I don't want to get into those details there. What is your beliefs that you have? And how it gets reflected with your study? And you want to advocate something, maybe there are a lot of the studies that are done in social sciences, especially about feminism, about racial discrimination, ethnicity, and all the stuff there. How are you trying to advocate that? And for very long, even I had lived with this kind of a notion which says God created Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve. And today you're trying to talk about LGBT. How are you trying to advocate it? What is the social science lens that you have? What are the components which constitute that? And then further, the procedures. How do you go about with working it out? Whether you do it sequentially, what are the emphasis? More on quantitative, less on quantitative, equal, or what way you lean? Sometimes you do it concurrently, both together. Sometimes you do one after the other. Let's understand this better. Now look at it. Now this is again Creswell. His book I said I'll share with you, where you can get a lot of details on it. I use quantitative data and results. I use qualitative data and results. Simultaneously, I'm doing both of them. And I'm interpreting that problem based on the results generated by quantitative and qual. Look at that arrows pointing towards interpretation. Now, embedded, when I tell you there is something called as before and after effect, pre-test and post-test. Now, if I went about with conducting a kind of a quiz to you in the morning of the inaugural, what is your knowledge about these different research methodologies? And after the 3 days, I conduct a quiz. It talks about pre-test and post-test. If I say that there is no change in your score, either you were passive, you didn't learn, or something was wrong with a resource person like me, which couldn't bring you a change in what research methodology knowledge you already existed before you in you. So you talk about quantitative pre-test, then qualitative during the process of interpretation, post-test, and you do the interpretation. Embedded design. The next one is, look at it, sequential. Explanatory. There's a difference between exploratory. If you're trying to explain the variables, you call it explanatory. If you're trying to throw light on the problem, you call it exploratory. So here you say, A quantitative data results is followed up with a qualitative data results, then you do the interpretation. For exploratory, here also you build up, you follow one with the other, but you build up a kind of a model and other things, and you do the interpretation. And sequential, before the intervention, after the intervention, you have qualitative in both the things, and here you have quantitative. What is the intervention? You conduct a test. What is your knowledge about research? I conduct a test and I figure out, and then I say whether this course was adding value to you or not. Now, these are all the symbols. What are the design options that you have? Whether you will go, I mean, more importantly, when you talk about mixed, we talk about triangulation. Let me get into it one by one. Concurrent triangulation. You have a quantitative data collection. You have a qualitative data collection. You do a qualitative data analysis, quantitative data analysis. You get both the results, compare it, and figure out a composite model. You're trying to get a blend of these two things happening together. You call it concurrent triangulation design visual model. Or it could be an exploratory sequential. You combine both quantitative and qualitative. You do the analysis, and then you do the qualitative. After these things, you do the qualitative, and then you have the result. So some examples which I took it from this work there, Presswell's book. Now you look at this, phase one, you may do a qualitative one. Phase two, you may do a quantitative one, exploratory sequential, one after the other. You have a qualitative data collection, and qualitative findings. You have a quantitative instrument. You go about with testing the instrument, executing the questionnaire, and then you do the results, and you blend the results of both. Now this is embedded within it. And you're talking about connecting qualitative and quantitative there. Whether you use sequential, whether you use concurrent, both one after the other sequential. When you do simultaneously, it is concurrent. Embedded is a mix of both sequential and concurrent together. So methodologies, you use strategies to explore contradictory findings. Each researcher has its own way of looking at things there. There are some parallel questions, some samples that are there in the quantitative or qualitative, or you are trying to overcome biases and other things there, and the different kinds of designs that you apply. And qualitative is beginning with what and how. It focuses on a single phenomenon. You're trying to figure out the exploratory verbs, discover, understand, explore. These are the words that you have more with qualitative. It is non-directional. When you say hypothesis testing, we say two-tail test, left tail, right tail. If you're trying to give the direction, we call it directional. If you use positive, negative words, you say it is directional. But if you use neutral words, we say it's non-directional. You're trying to arrive at a general consensus. So quantitative would be more with hypothesis and questions. It will state the variables, what is dependent, what is independent. In fact, when you do E-views, you'll understand it more, what are the mediating variables. Or when you do advanced SPSS, you understand about covariates. You develop things from the theory. You use distinct measures for what is independent and what is dependent. I mean, it sounds very easy for me to tell y is equal to a plus bx. What goes into it? On what basis am I saying one is dependent, other is the independent? And how do you write a research question? What are the qualitative research questions, quantitative research questions? And when you blend them together, how the questions change? You write them separately. So a type of this research question mixed is, wherein is it methodology focused? Or is it content focused? To what extent will your results confirm? Content, when you talk about content or substance, a lot of those things there. And are you trying to bring a hybrid of both of them together? Now it's around 3:10 odd. And I said I'll share this Creswell's book with you. And for me, what is more important is the Naresh Malhotra's marketing research, business research by Uma Sekaran, and the Wiley's publication that is there. Michael is a very old book. But I would always suggest that you learn what is called as this measurement and scaling properly before you venture into questionnaire design. And be very clear as to how to use the proper wording. And when you go about executing a questionnaire, which is worked out very well with Naresh Malhotra, there is a checklist. Sometimes students get me questionnaires and ask me, "Sir, check my questionnaire." I said, "What are you asking me to check? The sequence, the number, the grammar?" No, you get me the objectives. You get me the synopsis. I will relate your synopsis with the questionnaire. If not, I would figure out as to what is the reason for asking this question. So you have 10 questions and sub questions in that checklist, which is given in Naresh Malhotra's book. Don't say that it is only meant for marketing. For any area of research, it would be useful. A lot of research designs they go about with explaining there. I wish that you get insights into that. I'll share that ebooks with the ma'am, and it's getting very close to 3:15. So I would go about with taking questions from the participants. I tried giving you a feel of what is qualitative, what is quantitative, what is mixed methods of research, and what are the different models of mixed methods of research, whether it's hybrid, whether it is to do with sequential, or whether it's to do with concurrent, and lot many other things that are there. It all starts with inquisitive minds asking questions. So I'll share this PPT with ma'am, and she would in turn probably share it with you all. So I find a very huge number of people. I was seeing that the Google Meet was buzzing. I find Narasimha sir, I find Ramlu sir, not many other seniors of the group as well there. Thank you so much. Now, can I have some questions coming with anything to do with the methodology or things which I can answer it out with my experience? Or you have very senior colleagues also in the group, somebody would add on or augment to what I have tried sharing with you. My thing was very clear, trying to tell about hypothesis, make it very clear. Sometimes when we do it manually, we talk about table value and critical value. But when you do it with SPSS and E-views, you talk what is called as p-value, which is based on probability. What is probability? A numerical value that you assign to the certainty with which an event will happen. And the value varies anywhere between 0 and 1. If I roll a die, what is the chance I get a side with 6 dots, 7 dots if I ask you? It is 0. It is an impossible event. What is the chance that you would get anywhere ranging between 1 dot to 6 dots? It is 1 by 6. So it is based on probability that you do the interpretation. So you'll have to get yourself very well equipped with these tools of hypothesis testing and a lot of other things that are there. And my role was only trying to give you a kind of an insight into the steps in research, the types of research. The core is about research design. You can never undermine the research design because that acts as a rudder, that acts like a compass. Your entire journey of research is determined by your research design. The strength, the core comes from it. So you decide whether you would rely on the quantitative or the qualitative or the mixed methods. So I'll just check if there are any questions in the chat.
Good afternoon, sir.
Uh,
This is Renu,
Yama.
and a very nice presentation on the particular data. So I have a
Yeah.
very simple question related to the inductive and the deductive approach. If we are teaching to the MA economics students, so generally, like what kind of the example we have to provide them, so easily they can have an idea like what is the inductive and what is the deductive. And I think this kind of approaches have been widely used, like if you are from the geography department, so they will give you the different example. If you are from the economics, they will give you the different example. So I am from economics, so from economic perspective, what will be the suitable example for explaining the deductive and the inductive approach?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Now, the thing, ma'am, like, how did we arrive at certain laws? In fact, the other day I was with J.N. Rao, sir, trying to check the MA economics entrance question paper, and he was discussing some laws also with me there. Now, when these laws have come, it is almost like it has become a final thing there. All right. Now, when we are trying to study a particular phenomenon, it's not always possible to make an exhaustive study by taking everybody and everything that includes in the population there. So when we say anything which can be done with a sample, I mean a small part or the portion of the population there, I mean I would usually go for syllogisms, I mean, if I have to answer that, syllogisms, I believe you understand. Let us say if I have to talk about a deductive approach, this is something what you get in CAT entrance or various other kinds, where you say that all men are mortal, Brian is a man. So what is your conclusion, ma'am? I'll ask Renu ma'am to give me the interpretation. I'll say all men are mortal, and I say Brian is a man. So what is your final conclusion?
So Brian will be mortal.
Brian is mortal. How did you come out of it? Probably use Venn diagrams for that.
Yeah,
The entire world can be divided into living and non-living. Mortals are the
Yes.
ones who face death. Immortals are the ones who don't face death. If you're a theist or an atheist, you talk about religion and you say nature kind of a thing there. So when you say man is mortal, he can't escape death, and Brian is somebody who belongs to mankind, and say you said Brian is also a mortal there. So you can figure out maybe based on, normally when I look from economics, I would teach demand and cost and market structure. And let's say it's something to do with the price fixing kind of a thing, whether you're a price maker or a price taker kind of a thing there, or where do I apply king to demand curve, or what is it when it comes to an oligopoly? When I say it is monopsony, I would say a single seller and single buyer and many sellers kind of a thing there. I would go about with applying, like, when you say that there is a leadership pricing, one person sets the price and everybody else accepts. And why is that a king demand? Because somebody goes about with increasing the price, all don't follow. What somebody drops, all follow. So, you have a generalization happening there. So I would use these kind of things related with my theory. Simple enough, ma'am. If you're going from particular to general, you call it inductive. If you're going from general to particular, you call it deductive. Did I answer you?
So, sir, thank you, sir. So the example you have given, it was like the brand. The brand was mortal one. So it
Yeah.
was the deductive approach.
It is deductive.
Is deductive from
Yes.
general to particular. So what
Yes,
will be
ma'am.
about inductive?
When I have told certain things as good as maybe buying rice or to know a grain of rice is cooked or not, or maybe blood sampling, it's quite common. You're talking about statistics of COVID there. What are you doing? You're trying to go about with using that rapid antigen tests and other things. You're just taking a earbud kind of a thing, inserting in the nose. And with a thing which you're putting it on a small plastic kind of a thing there, you're able to tell whether COVID parasite is there in that person's entire body or not. Small swab test that you do. Don't you think it is inductive sample? Agreed, ma'am? Or you do a blood test. That also is a sample. Again, you have numbers in that.
Yeah, sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you actually.
Now, I was talking about the swab test, the blood test, and other things where you make a small sample and out of that you make a generalization.
Yeah, because obviously from particular to journal we are going. So
Yes,
we
yes.
have to take the blood test, and after that we
We make a generalization. You asked me for
so for
inductive.
that
That is the
we
reason I
have to take
quoted
a
that.
lot of samples so that we can generalize that in particular area.
For that individual, to tell me that I have COVID or not, only my sample is required there.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That's the thing.
That's true.
Yeah, I have Neelot Pal asking me, do you classify research and political science? One thing I'll tell you, research is something which is universal. Where do I get a lot of knowledge about this hypothesis testing and other things? I get a lot of that with literature that comes from medical sciences. If you have to get in-depth knowledge about what is hypothesis, but research is same. It is generic. Critical thinking is generic. It is not domain specific. It is domain general. You require critical thinking. You come from languages, you come from arts, you come from commerce, management, engineering, medicine. You require critical thinking. Very much like that. Research is also very much where you say it is to do with being domain general. But the thing is, how do you apply it? What tools do you go about with using to get to an answer or solution to a problem? I mean, it could be to do with ideas. If I say economics there, for a very long time, probably you had Adam Smith school of thought, wherein he said about laissez-faire, free reign and all. And then after that, 1929, where there was that Great Depression, it turned out to be that you had John Maynard Keynes and economics got split into Keynesian school of thought and Adam Smith school of thought. I'm not very sure about what are the different schools of thought you have in politics. I did have a lot of my friends studying MA political sciences, but it could be that way there, how people had come to that kind of thinking. But I said research per se is very, very generic and not domain specific. Yeah, if I can get any more questions in the chat. I think there is some appreciation to the coordinator also there. He says kudos to the coordinator. I don't get anything, and he says you can raise your hand or you can unmute and ask, or you can text it. I mean, I've taken that extra bit of time that is there is to ensure that I interact. It's not just that I present a PPT. PPT invariably I'll share, and I'll share quite a lot of literature, textbooks on methodology, on research. I'll share it. That will be passed on to you.
But you can ask question.
Yes. Whoever it is.
You may respond. Or if you are or someone respond, please.
I don't know. The voice is not coherent. I'm not able to understand it. If you can text it, I don't know if my voice is coherent or not on the other extreme. I think the entire pandemic went away by asking, am I audible? I'm audible, kind of a thing there. Somebody will have to tell me out. I mean, someone is asking a question. If I can hear it or if you can text it, I'll be more happy.
Actually, sir, your voice is very much clear.
Thank you. Now, somebody is asking a question. I couldn't get it. How should student evaluate himself whether he is fit for PhD? Now, I don't know. This is something I have not done it before. How do you find yourself fit? I mean, anybody who is inquisitive, someone who has that zest and passion to find a solution to a problem, I think you're fit for PhD. I always tell it this way. I mean, you talk about a lot of things that are there, but Osmania University has got its vision statement and mission statement. I ask you personally, do you have, Pranav?
Patrick has gone for some time outside this.
Yeah, somebody is trying to figure out where I was. I was in Ethiopia for 2 years. Okay. So when I would look for what it is when it is to do with fit for PhD or not, I would ask you, what is your mission statement and what is your vision statement personally? Your mission statement is the reason for your birth. Mission statement. Vision is where do you see 10 to 15 years from now? I talk about a few P's apart from the product, price, place, promotion, people, process, physical evidence, and productivity. I'll tell you, you need to figure out what is your purpose in life. You need to understand your passion. You need to understand you have a plan. Then you need to understand your potential. Suppose I hold something in my hand this way. I say, imagine this as an apple. And at this, I call it as an apple seed. And I tell you, can you count the number of apples in the seed? Sounds ridiculous. But the seed, when it is put in the right soil and nurtured and given the right kind of treatment, it grows into a full-blown tree. I said, that is potential. Do you know your potential? Do you know your inner worth? And all these P's combined together, you'll have to work hard. That is your perseverance. Kondal sir is having tea on his own. I don't get a tea here. Okay. I put it this way there. So I said you should have a purpose. You should have passion. You should have right perspective, a plan, and you should persevere. And when you combine all these things, it makes you a professional. And as students, I tell you, you got to have what is called as study skills, soft skills, software skills, all these things you require. So that is where you have to assess yourself whether you're fit for a PhD or not. So make clear what is your vision and mission, then you know whether to come in PhD or not. I think I've answered you.
But sir, many of the times the people or the student, they don't know what is their potential.
Yeah. As a teacher, I think you should let them know.
Yes,
if you want,
I motivated all my students because I have seen them for the last 2 years. But the end of the semester, they have, given me the answer that actually, ma'am, we were not aware that we have this kind of the skill. So you intimated us that I have this skill and you have that skill. So particularly as an individual, sometimes we don't know when the other person will come in our lives, and then he or she will motivate you. Okay, you have this kind of the potential, then we can work it on out. So I think Pranav, I don't know whether he's a scholar or the
No,
faculty.
had my teacher not told me that I have these potential in me, I don't think I would have been standing in front of
But
you
sir,
today.
in my case, I have motivated many of my
Wonderful,
students.
wonderful,
Thank you, sir.
wonderful. Thank you, Shreyesh. And anyone else asking me questions? Thank you for that appreciation, Shreyesh. As I promised, I'll share that material and other things with ma'am, but still there is time. If I can take a few more questions coming my way, then I would take that, or I would leave it to the organizers to continue with it. But
Sir,
don't
I
count the
also
days.
request to the coordinator that please share the PPT with the
I will do that.
participant.
But I'll tell you another thing. Whoever has asked, Renu ma'am or whoever asked for the PPT, don't get into the mode of collecting PPTs. See, I'll tell you, I have a lot of this stuff in my pen drive. If I take this and rub it to my scalp, contents don't get transferred. So you need to
No, sir.
really
The
take and
important ones I have
I would share it.
already.
I would share it. I don't
I
have anything
already
to
have the screenshot.
No, I'll share the entire PPT as well. By
Yeah.
evening, you'll get the ebooks and the PPT. Don't worry. I have a small admission process. After that, I think I'll share everything with ma'am.
Dear Renu madam, we will share the PPTs at the end of the workshop.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I
Is there
also
anyone who
request to
needs
the
some clarification
coordinator
regarding
that
that?
please share the schedule of the tomorrow's workshop.
It is there in the brochure. It is there in the brochure.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is there anyone?
Devinath is my student, I think. He's also attending. Good.
Yeah, please. Is there anyone need some clarification regarding that how to frame hypotheses or objectives and some methodological issues? Or you can ask. Yeah, dear participants, if there is no questions, we will end up this. Just a minute, sir.
Yeah. I'm there very much.
Now,
Thank you once again, Daisy
relax.
ma'am and
Is there?
all other people from the
It's out of
economics
time.
department. I think it's a delight. Somebody else calling from another department to be a resource person. It's been a wonderful time sharing little things what I know with the participants here.
Thank you very much, sir, for
Sir,
spending
there is
your
one
valuable
question.
time over here, though you are very busy. We know that you are very, very busy. In spite of that, you have taken time for us and spending your valuable time in giving lecture. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Sorry. Sir, Patrick, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there are one question. Someone has raised the question.
Yeah, I have seen that. It talks about the strengths and weaknesses of the mixed methods. Now, what you're doing in a mixed method is you are blending the qualitative and the quantitative. So whatever are the merits and demerits of
I didn't
qualitative
get you.
and quantitative
Yes.
will go about with working out
Just
together
hi, Chan.
as the weaknesses and strengths of the mixed method.
That's the reason I independent and just try.
Ramlu sir also is there. Good afternoon, sir.
So now, the two said, okay, sir, thank you, sir. So now,
Sorry? Go.
Good afternoon, dear participants. Good afternoon, sir. Patrick, sir. Myself, Lakshmi. Good afternoon, dear participants. I would like to say thanks to Dr. A. Patrick, sir, Usmania University Department of Commerce, for delivered a lecture on introduction to qualitative and quantitative and mixed research methods. It's very, very useful, sir, to beginners. Those who are doing on mixed methods, how we can interlink between qualitative and quantitative research. So finally, I extend my sincere thanks to A. Patrick, sir, for sparing your valuable time. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Happy
you, sir.
learning. Make the days count and don't count the days. 3 days. To all the participants. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Daisy ma'am, Ramlu sir, Jain Rao sir, and Kondal sir, and Lakshmi ma'am, and to all the participants. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And it's very useful, sir, beginners.
Thanks a lot. I'll take leave.
Thank you, sir.
Now I am going to the session.
Okay. Shall we meet tomorrow, all of us? All of us, shall we meet tomorrow? So we'll call it a day. See you tomorrow then. Thank you all the participants for joining us.
Yeah, please leave the meeting and I'll close the meeting.